I'm Shannon Peterson. I'm the Youth Services Manager from Kitsap Regional Library, located just across the water from Seattle. So we're a semi-rural library system. And I haven't met you before, so if you could introduce yourself.
I'm Gail Sheldon. I am the Children's and Youth Services Director for the State Library, Public Library Service in Alabama. And I've worked with teens, I've worked with children. I've been a director of 2 small rural libraries.
For those folks that aren't familiar with IMLS or that acronym, can you tell us about that?
Sure. That's the Institute for Museum and Library Services. And they are the ones that, first and foremost, for most of the just individual libraries across the country, administrate LSTA funds that flow into the states. Mm-hmm. All the states use those a little bit differently. It depends. Some states use them completely at the state level to serve their libraries. Other states are a combination. And some states let them flow through competitive grants to all of their libraries. I can speak for here in Alabama that we use some of those funds on the state level to provide databases that are accessible to all the public libraries in the state, actually everybody in the state. And we also have competitive LSTA grants. We use those funds for the summer reading program. We use the funds for the Regional Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped. So all those services in Alabama will go away if the IMLS goes away and the LSTA funds are not reappropriated for the fiscal year. And right now, LSTA funds, the Library Services and Technology Act funds, we are operating under an extension. They have not even been appropriated for this year. So that reappropriation vote is going to be coming up next month. So it's critical that we get that information, get any advocacy information that we have to our congressional representatives.
Mm-hmm. And Gail, can you speak to the timeline of when those votes start happening, the appropriation votes?
The appropriation votes, I'm not sure of the date, but they happen sometime in April. I do know that that their spring break is going to happen sometime the second week of April, which also happens to be National Library Week. How cool is that? So they'll be back in their home districts. So that's another great way that it's another great time for libraries to be able to contact their representatives.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I think you make a really important point. I think a lot of people hear IMLS and they're like, oh, those are those huge grants that big library systems get, you know, and I think it's really important that people understand the essential factor of LSTA funds and the breadth of what those do. And I appreciate you speaking to all that. So we know that LSTA funds impact libraries throughout the United States, both in especially small and rural libraries. So what can small and rural libraries do? I mean, you just mentioned, you know, that the break for Congress is coming up, and what can libraries do to engage their Congress people during that time?
Well, first, right now, today, if possible, as soon as possible, get on the phone and call your representative's office. Find out who your representative is, call them. You're probably only going to be speaking to a staffer, but those staffers are trained and they're really easy to talk to, and just get your voice heard that way first. And then I said, trust me, you'll be getting a follow-up email and letter from me. So they know that that's coming, and you can further explain yourself in writing or in that email. I think the biggest thing when you contact people is to tell them a story. tell them something that happened in your library that affected your patrons' lives or affected a child's life. A child wouldn't have had the opportunity to even have a book in their hand because the poverty in your area is so high if they didn't come to the library. Somebody, a single parent who was laid off their job, couldn't find a job because they had to use the internet. Their internet was turned off. They sold their laptop. They came to the library and were able to find a job through that. Those are stories that I've seen in my libraries.
I think that's such a good point. You know, it can seem really scary to call your district office. Like, you know, you might feel like you don't have the vocabulary to do that, or you don't have the breadth of knowledge of the issue, but really just being able, everyone who works in a library can tell those kinds of stories about the impact that we see and the ways that we affect our community. So I think that's such an important point, having that in your mind when you call. You don't have to, you know the entire history of LSTA or how it's funded or whatever. Just say that you know that this is coming up and you want to speak to the value of these funds in libraries. Any other, so we're calling, we're writing emails and letters, and you mentioned perhaps engaging elected officials during their break. Can you?
Yeah, it's a great time if you haven't already met your representative when he's in your home district, he or she's in your home district, to call them, make an appointment, have them come visit your library. Sometimes it's good to get to know them before major events like this happen. But even though we have to act now regardless, building those relationships with them, establishing that, how's your wife? How's your husband? What's your family up to? Once you open that door, you'll be able to get to them more readily. They will know you, they will know your face. Just be friendly with them. Just talk to them. Have them into your library when there's something going on that you want them to see. But it's just for instance, we had a state legislative day, and I'm not even in the state representative's district anymore, but I was sitting in the hallway and he came by and he saw me. We didn't have an appointment or anything. I said, can you spare a few minutes? He sat with me for 30 minutes.
Wow, that's awesome, Gail.
And spoke to me about libraries. And I had a director of my old library that I was director of with me, and he sat and listened to us for 30 minutes because he knew us, he knew our faces, he knew us personally. And so that personal connection, if you can establish it, is gold. It is political gold for us.
Absolutely. I know a lot of our members are, we have a lot of frontline library workers. Are there ways that you've sort of started to develop those relationships rather than, I feel like inviting someone to come to a library can feel like a big step. Are there ways that you can think to kind of scaffold that relationship? Or is that just as individual as the elected official?
I think it's individual. You might have somebody in a rural county who's an elected official who's a farmer. Talk to them about their farm. But it is very individual. It is, and it's hard to pick up the phone and make that first phone call. But like I say, that first time you'll be talking to a staffer, and you'll probably be talking to a staffer to make that appointment. But once you meet them, just be yourself and just tell them how important a library has been to you for your whole life and how important it is to the lives of these children, teens, parents, everybody who walks into the library. And then have them think about what it'd be like to walk out of the library and have that door be locked for the last time.
As you mentioned, like, this is relationship building and work that we should always be doing. Like, if we're trying to keep libraries relevant and functional and funded, you know, it's not about us, it's about the people that we serve. So this, incorporating this in our everyday jobs is a really essential thing, I think, and something that more of us could do. So do you have tips for like kind of making this kind of advocacy part of your regular routine in libraries?
Well, even if you're a youth worker, take pictures of your events that are going on, and maybe ask the director if you could go to a city council meeting or a county commission meeting, whoever your governing municipality is, and share the pictures. Tell them what's going on. They love to see pictures. They love to see pictures of kids just having a great time, doing things. Also, another way we found to engage some of our local people is to have them come in and do summer reading programs for us. Our mayor collected arrowheads. He had a whole basement full of them, and he came in and brought his arrowheads. And now it's kind of like an every other year thing where he comes in and does that. If you find that they have a hobby that they might like to share, have them come in and share it. And once they do that, they see what you're doing, and they're more likely to listen to you. So it's just continuing to build those personal relationships. Always have your face there. Bring what's going on in the library to them. And once you get doing that on a local level, it's a lot easier to do it on a state or a federal level.
Yeah.
Join a chamber of commerce. They're always having events that you can go to and meet these people in a really relaxed setting. And you can go up and shake their hand, introduce yourself, say a few words and walk away, but they will remember faces. And so make sure that you're involved in organizations that can get you in touch with the people that that you want to talk to.
I love that. And I totally agree. I think starting on a super local level really like helps build you to a place of getting to the state local people. It just gets easier and easier and kind of snowballs. So that's huge. I should mention that YALSA has a legislative advocacy guide that you know, highlights some of the things that we've talked about, but just sort of has a lot of best practice and tips on how to do some of this work and jump into some of this work. And if you haven't seen the advocacy benchmarks, that's also an amazing tool. It spans the breadth beyond just legislative advocacy, but I think it's a great tool to help you kind of frame and think about some of these issues.
Right. Anytime you can get involved with anybody in your community and talk about the library, you're engaging in political action. You really are. Unfortunately, being in a library is political business because we have to go out, and politics is not a dirty word because it's just going out and sharing with other people what you do and how important it is. So just if you could just think of it that way. Yeah. Do it every day.
And it's not about you, it's about trying to continue the work that libraries do.
Right.
So are there any kind of last words that you would want to share with members to kind of get them out there and doing this?
Just the fact that if this budget goes through the way it's written right now, the IMLS will cease to exist. LSTA funding will cease to exist. Many of our libraries in Alabama, it's their only way of getting funding for computers, even library materials. There just isn't the resources out there. So it's going to take action. A lot of our libraries here are even thinking about putting up letter writing stations in their libraries and educating their patrons as to what will go away should this pass. And if they say I'm not a letter writer, they'd say, well, here, how about a postcard? You know, and they've got the postcards ready to give them. So any little thing that you can do, but the biggest thing to do right now, today, is to call. Call your federal representatives and say, this is what will happen in my library if this goes away. This is the effect it will have. This story of this person who got a job. That'll not happen anymore.
Yeah.
If they truly want to put America back to work, they can't take away the very institutions that are helping people actually get jobs and go to work.
I think the power of small and rural libraries, the network that small and rural libraries have to be able to influence their communities to start writing those letters and postcards is huge. So we gotta get to it.
Yep, it's important. It's immediate. It's really immediate. It's a now type of thing. It cannot wait till next week. It can't wait, 3 or 4 days from now. Yeah. The first phone call has to be made.
All right. Well, I'm going to go make some phone calls and write some postcards.
Okay. That sounds great, Shannon. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Likewise. So nice to meet you, and keep doing the awesome work that you're doing.